In the heart of Louisiana, the sun dipped low, casting an orange hue over the pines lining St. Landry Road. Officer Jake Thompson, a young white cop with a buzz cut and a square jaw, was on patrol when he spotted a charcoal gray Chevy Tahoe. He flicked on his lights, expecting a routine stop. What he didn't anticipate was the driver, Marcus Reynolds, an FBI agent, who was about to turn this encounter into a national conversation. Marcus had just wrapped up a long day of interviews and paperwork, his mind still on the debrief scheduled for the next day. He wasn't speeding, nor was he in a rush. As he pulled over near an empty Baptist church, he felt a familiar tension rise. Unmarked vehicles and a black man behind the wheel often raised eyebrows in these parts. When Officer Thompson approached, he barked orders without introduction. License and registration. Step out of the car. Marcus's heart raced, but he kept his voice steady. Sir, I'd prefer to stay in the vehicle. I'm a federal agent with the FBI. I'm armed and can show you my credentials. Thompson squinted, dismissing Marcus's claim. Get out of the vehicle. You fit the description of a suspect. Marcus's pulse quickened, not from fear but from the realization that this was escalating. He slowly reached for his badge, ensuring his movements were deliberate and calm. I'm Special Agent Marcus Reynolds. You're making a mistake. The officer leaned closer, smirking as he radioed for backup, claiming Marcus was an impersonator. Marcus's mouth went dry. He knew this was no mistake, it was a dangerous game of power. My hands are visible. I have not exited the vehicle. You are escalating a legal stop without cause, he stated. His voice steadied, Thompson's eyes narrowed, and the tension thickened. Marcus calculated his next move, aware that the situation could spiral out of control. He glanced at the camera mounted on the patrol car, hoping someone was watching. But unbeknownst to him, help was not on the way. It was about to get worse as backup arrived. Marcus felt the weight of the moment. Officer Jake Thompson, convinced of his authority, continued to escalate the situation. Marcus remained calm, knowing that he had to survive this encounter. The new officers, a woman and a younger man, approached, and the woman's demeanor shifted as she examined Marcus's credentials. Are you armed? She asked. Yes, Marcus replied. Glock 19, safety on, loaded. The woman stepped back, her expression changing as she processed the situation. Thompson, however, was not convinced. He's FBI, but I don't buy it, he insisted. The female officer, now skeptical of Thompson's judgment, requested a verification of Marcus's ID. As they awaited confirmation, the tension hung in the air. Marcus's heart raced, not from fear but from the realization that he was fighting not just for himself but for countless others who had faced similar situations. When the confirmation came through, it was like a hammer dropping. Marcus was indeed a federal agent. Thompson stood stunned, his bravado crumbling. You understand we had to be cautious, he stammered, attempting to regain control. Marcus leaned forward, his voice low but firm. You never asked for ID. You ordered me out at gunpoint. There was no cause. The other officers remained silent, the weight of the moment settling in. Marcus continued, I've interviewed over 200 officers in misconduct cases. You all say the same thing, I was just being cautious. But caution doesn't look like this. Caution listens. The female officer stepped in, her voice steady. You're lucky, Jake. If he wasn't who he said he was, we'd be sorting out your mess with the coroner. Thompson's face flushed with embarrassment, and Marcus felt a flicker of victory. But this wasn't just about him. It was about the systemic issues that plagued law enforcement. As the situation de-escalated, Marcus stepped out of the vehicle, the energy shifting. He stood tall, his presence commanding respect. Sergeant Alex Carter arrived, assessing the scene. Agent Reynolds, I think we need to have a longer conversation somewhere more controlled, he said. Marcus shook his head. I'm not stepping foot in your department unless my bureau liaison is present. He turned to the female officer, appreciating her professionalism. Thank you for treating me like a human being back there. As the officers processed the unfolding events, Marcus handed Sergeant Carter a folder containing complaints against Thompson. Since you mentioned wanting to get ahead of this, he said, you might want to read what your department's been ignoring for months. The sergeant's expression shifted as he flipped through the pages. "This is detailed," he muttered, realizing the depth of the issues at hand. Marcus's heart raced, knowing that this was just the beginning. The next morning, the footage of the encounter went viral. News outlets picked up the story, and protests erupted across Louisiana. Marcus watched as the community rallied, demanding accountability and change. He had become a symbol of resilience, a voice for those who had been silenced for too long. As the protests grew, Marcus found himself at the center of a movement. He spoke at community meetings, sharing his experience and urging others to stand up against injustice. "This isn't just about one incident," he said. "It's about a culture that sees control as power and questioning as a threat." Days turned into weeks, and the pressure mounted. Marcus received calls from civil rights organizations, media outlets, and even politicians. He knew that this was a pivotal moment, not just for him but for the entire community. A quiet moment. Marcus sat down to reflect. He had never wanted to be a story, he just wanted to go home. But now, with the world watching, he realized that he had a responsibility to speak out, to challenge the status quo. As he prepared for a podcast interview, Marcus took a deep breath. "I'm Marcus Reynolds," he began, "and I'm here to tell you that silence won't fix anything, but your voice might." He shared his truth, urging listeners to take action, to demand change, and to hold those in power accountable. The conversation continued to grow, spilling into homes, schools, and community centers. Marcus's story became a catalyst for change, inspiring others to stand up and speak out against injustice. In the end, it wasn't just about one traffic stop, it was about a movement that had been long overdue. Marcus Reynolds had become a beacon of hope, a reminder that change was possible, and that together, they could create a better future for all. As the weeks passed, the protests intensified, and Marcus found himself speaking at rallies, sharing his story with a growing audience. He emphasized the importance of community engagement and the need for systemic reform in law enforcement. "We must hold our officers accountable," he urged. "We need to ensure that every citizen, regardless of their race, is treated with dignity and respect." The media coverage continued to escalate, and Marcus became a sought-after voice in discussions about police reform. He participated in interviews, podcasts, and community forums, always advocating for justice and equality. His calm demeanor and articulate arguments resonated with many, and he quickly became a symbol of hope for those who felt marginalized. Meanwhile, Officer Jake Thompson faced mounting pressure from within his department and the community. As the investigation into his conduct unfolded, he found himself isolated and scrutinized. His colleagues were hesitant to engage with him, and the weight of his actions began to sink in. He had not only jeopardized his career but had also contributed to a culture of fear and mistrust. As the days turned into weeks, Marcus continued to push for change. He collaborated with local activists, community leaders, and civil rights organizations to draft a comprehensive proposal for police reform. The proposal included measures for better training on implicit bias, de-escalation techniques, and community engagement strategies. On the day of the proposal's presentation to the city council, Marcus stood before a packed room, his heart racing with anticipation. He spoke passionately about the need for change, sharing personal anecdotes and statistics that highlighted the systemic issues within law enforcement. "This is not just about one officer's actions," he said. "It's about a culture that needs to change. We must work together to build trust between law enforcement and the communities they serve." The council members listened intently, and as Marcus concluded his speech, the room erupted in applause. It was a moment of solidarity, a testament to the power of community action and the importance of standing up for what is right. In the following weeks, the city council voted to implement several of Marcus's proposals, marking a significant step toward reform. The news spread quickly, and Marcus received messages of support from across the country. He had become a beacon of hope, inspiring others to take action in their own communities. As the movement gained momentum, Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought him to this point. He had never intended to become a public figure, but he understood the importance of using his voice to advocate for change. He was determined to continue fighting for justice, not just for himself but for everyone who had been affected by systemic injustice. In the end, the story of Marcus Reynolds was not just about one traffic stop. It was about the power of resilience, the strength of community, and the unwavering belief that change is possible. Together, they could create a future where everyone is treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their race or background. And as Marcus looked toward the future, he knew that the fight for justice was far from over. It was just beginning.